Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk, the most fact-driven, unbiased true crime channel. All right, let's get straight to the docket. First, more documents have been released in the Murdock case in South Carolina. Second, a famous animal rights attorney gets 10 years in prison. Why you should give respect to a judge and other officials, but remember, they're human. How do you get arrested for concealment of a corpse? We'll explain. And then finally, our dumb criminal contestant of the day. Let's talk about it. Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for watching. Hey, if you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button as well as the little like button, and don't forget to hit that bell so that you receive notifications of when we go live or put up new content. We are going live tonight, so please join us. And immediately following our live show, guess what? Our Patreon members, we will have our show where you can call in tonight. So join us 6 p.m. Mountain Time tonight, and we go live. All right, Crime Talk aficionados, we have a new sponsor. And what does that mean? They support us, so let's support them. So are you getting an uneasy feeling about the future? You can't put your finger on it, but you know something big is going to happen soon, and it's not going to be good. Well, millions of Americans feel the same way right now, and they are quietly stockpiling emergency food while they can. Do you have enough emergency food to get you through a sudden crisis? If not, check out My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's #1 preparedness company, and they've served millions of American families. Right now, you can save 25% off their popular 4-week emergency food kit. You'll enjoy a hearty breakfast, lunch, dinner, drinks, and snacks, totaling over 2,000 calories a day, while everyone else is going to be standing in a food line. Plus, this food stays fresh for up to 25 years in proper storage, so it will be there when you need it. But don't wait. Go to crimetalkprep.com and claim your 4-week emergency food kit. You'll save 25% if you act now. That's crimetalkprep.com. Go there now. Okay, straight to the docket. Well, the South Carolina police authorities have released more documents related to the Paul Murdaugh case. Now, for those of you who don't recall, Paul Murdaugh and his mother, Maggie Murdock, were found gunned down at their hunting house in South Carolina back in early June. No arrests have been made, but as a result of other leads found at the house, other criminal investigations have been reopened, and there's been a lot of suspicion regarding the death of a maid that worked at the house who sued for basically the family did for a wrongful death case. This family has got issues, to say the least. Nobody's been charged, but things are becoming more and more clear as it relates to the case that brought Paul Murdaugh to the national attention. As you may recall, he was the one that was charged with the death as a result of the boating accident that resulted in the death of Mallory Beach. She was one of the occupants of the boat that hit the bridge near Parris Island, South Carolina. Well, new evidence has been released. We talked a little bit about this last week, that Paul Murdaugh had his brother's fake ID, and they went to a bar just prior to hitting the bridge, which resulted people to be thrown from the boat. We've been able to learn that Mallory Beach, who was 19 at the time, had a BAC of 0.155 at the time of her death. And that crash resulted in Murdock being charged with 3 counts of felony boating under the influence. Now, those charges were recently dismissed easily because, well, he's passed away. There's no one left to prosecute. Civil cases continue, and there will be continuing civil litigation. The father has been charged because he lent his boat to his son. The brother has been charged because he lent his ID to Paul Murdock, who went and used it to buy alcohol while he was underage, and various bars and grocery stores have been charged as well because they sold to a minor. And these are the type of cases where everybody gets sued, everybody gets charged when somebody dies. Some of the other news that came out of the information that was recently released was that many of the passengers refused to meet with investigators in the weeks after the crash. Connor Cook, who was suspected of possibly driving the boat at the time, he claimed he never was, in fact, the driver. But blood draws taken from him show that his BAC was 0.240 and 0.170 as the evening went on. So at 0.240, he is 3 times the legal limit. Oh, and of course, he's underage. There were observations that were made at the hospital. Murdock's nurse later told SLED, which is the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, agents that he was grossly intoxicated and told her he had been drinking and doing drugs all night long. Connor Cook's nurse said he smelled of alcohol and admitted to drinking. The 3 other survivors of the crash were not tested for blood alcohol levels. An attending physician at the hospital told the SLED agent that the blood draw was not medically necessary for Miley Altman or Morgan Dowdy. Anthony Cook was still at the scene of the crash and not at the hospital when the others had their blood drawn. Now, Murdock and Connor were the only ones that had IDs, fake IDs, showing that they were 21 or older. And after a day of drinking out at Murdock's home, where they had an oyster roast on the island, the boaters stopped at a downtown Beaufort dock so that Murdock and Connor Cook could continue to drink at Luther's Rare and Well Done. Where the bar gets in trouble is that a bouncer apparently checked Murdaugh's and Cook's IDs and allowed them into the bar. The Luther's bartender later told officers that Murdock asked if she would let their underage friend in, which she refused. It's unclear exactly where Connor Cook obtained his fake ID. One of the agents were told that Murdock got his from his older brother. Able to learn from the release of the new documents that Mallory Beach's phone, the police obtained a search warrant for that, but they were unable to obtain any information because the devices were damaged. Now, this case gets more and more interesting simply because of the power and influence that the Murdock family has in South Carolina. But I think that also the interesting thing is there's still no suspects whatsoever. Now, somebody that lives down there sent me an email, and I thought it was rather interesting. It said that if no one is ever charged, you must know that a Murdock must have been involved. Now, obviously, we'll give everyone the presumption of innocence. You would think where someone of this power and this influence in this community and all the resources of South Carolina are coming down and bearing on trying to find a suspect in this particular case, and nobody has been able to find anything. Next on the docket, an animal rights attorney gets 10 years in prison. Do you remember the story we brought you several months ago about Jennifer Emmy? She was a well-known animal rights attorney and media personality here in Colorado. Well, Emmy's 43 years old, and she just got sentenced to 10 years in prison. Why? Because she attempted to hire a hitman, one of the crew that worked at her ranch, to murder her husband's girlfriend. Now, she's been in custody since her arrest some 7 months ago, and she was really hoping that she was going to receive probation. Based upon her guilty pleas, she was eligible for probation, but the judge thought that that was not appropriate. At the sentencing hearing, Miss Emmy gave a statement to the judge, basically pleading for leniency in her sentencing statement, saying that over the last 2 years, she has struggled with serious mental health problems, as well as an autoimmune disease. She said that she took medication that kind of altered her state of mind. Not really a defense. But she continued on stating that she never wanted to kill anyone. She wasn't capable of such a thing, which is never really good when you go to a sentencing hearing. When you pled guilty, it's all about acceptance of responsibility. You don't say, yeah, I pled guilty, but I really didn't do it. Then the judge has said, you know what? Wow, maybe I should allow you to withdraw your guilty plea if you are saying that you didn't do anything. Once you plead guilty, you admit as a matter of law and as a matter of fact, that's what you did. It should have been all about being sorry, understanding the fear that victims were placed in as a result of having a hit put out on them, and that they're sorry and that she has no excuses for her conduct. When you make excuses at sentencing, it sounds like not accepting of responsibility. And what is the first thing they teach judges in judge school, right? The first step towards rehabilitation is acceptance of responsibility. So it doesn't surprise me that Miss Emmy got 10 years in prison. That's what happens when you try to take contracts out on people to kill people. It's a serious, serious offense, and that regardless of one's status or position in the community, you're still a danger to the community. Miss Emmy has several small young children. It's a shame that they're going to have to see her through a plexiglass or in her prison garb when she spends at least probably the next 5 years in prison. Because we all know she won't serve the full 10 years. She's already done 7 months, and she will be eligible for parole at 50% of her sentence. I think we've always said that you should respect judges. And I have different levels of respect for judges based upon, well, how good of judge they really are. And I think we have to keep in mind, as it relates to a lot of people that we hold in high regard. Now, whether it's somebody with a fancy title, maybe they're a public servant, but the reality of it is, at the end of the day, they're all human. Now, let me give you 2 examples of this particular situation. First, a former Weld County District Court judge by the name of Ryan Kamada. He's only 41 years old. And I remember appearing in front of him only a few times, but he was seen as a rising star on the Weld County bench here in Colorado. Well, he pled guilty in federal court to obstruction. And that obstruction had to do with the investigation of a cocaine trafficking ring that was being investigated in northern Colorado. Now, former Judge Kamada explained that he was apparently the on-call judge on April 23rd of 2019 when an investigator asked him to review a search warrant. That's not uncommon for judges to be there to review affidavits for arrest warrants and search warrants. They either get emailed or faxed, and they sign them and send them back. Well, in this particular search warrant, there was someone mentioned in there that he knew. It was one of his best friends and a mutual friend, a Jeffrey Chacon. Chacon was hired in the summer of 2019 to serve as the assistant principal at a middle school. Chacon quickly resigned about a month after he was hired. But then the subject of the warrant appears to be a guy by the name of Alberto or Beto Loya. He was apparently a known businessman and a philanthropist. Well, Kamada said he recused himself from signing off on the warrant due to his familiarity with Loya and a mutual association with Chacon. Now, out of a fear of the impact to Chacon's reputation, Judge Kamada, as a judge, warned Chacon to stay away from Loya. Kamada knew Loya since high school, and the two served together on a board of directors for the Weld County Latino Chamber of Commerce. When the judge recused himself from the case, a task force officer let the judge know that he was friends with Loya on Facebook. Early the next morning, Kamada called Chacon and told him that law enforcement was watching Loya's house, car, and phone, and Kamada then told Chacon to stay away from Loya. Now, the disclosure prompted Chacon to repeat the warning to Loya. As a result, Chacon distanced himself from Loya and his associates and instructed an associate of Loya's to correspond with Chacon using their work phone rather than their personal phones, the ones that are being subject to the wiretap. And Chacon pled guilty in November to destroying evidence in the investigation. Loya slowed down the pace of the investigation, according to the court records, and he cleaned his house of evidence relating to drug activity. Now, Chacon later asked Kamada about the investigation through, get this, an online Xbox video game, which apparently the two played several times a week. And now former Judge Kamada said he fabricated that the investigation was ongoing, even though he had no further knowledge beyond the call about the search warrant. Now, prior to the disclosure of this investigation, Kamada and Chacon were texting about a fight Loya got into with another drug dealer. Now, Chacon told Kamada about the fight and said the second dealer was all drunk and high on coke. Kamada responded. This doesn't sound very judge-like, right? Kamada responded as a judge in his capacity, as a civilian, but still a judge, that the second dealer, if he wants to play big boy stuff, then he needs to be a big boy. Now, apparently during this video conference, former Judge Kamada appeared to be very nervous in the hearing, and the federal judge had to request multiple times for Kamada to stay still in his attempt to limit noise on the voice telephone conference, video conference that was taking place, because we have COVID restrictions going on again. One of the things I think that is interesting is that the former Judge Kamada must have some deep pockets, because he hired a guy by the name of Michael Bender, who just happens to be of counsel at Perkins Coie, which is a national law firm with thousands of attorneys across the country. Now, most of these guys, the young associates, are probably being charged out at $400 an hour. But when you're Michael Bender, who's of counsel with the firm, and just happens to be the former chief judge of the Colorado Supreme Court, yeah, he's probably billing at about $1,000 an hour. He was the attorney that Kamada hired to represent him. Obviously, it didn't really matter in the end because he still pled guilty. He's looking at spending between 12 and 18 months in prison. And it's such a tragedy because this guy was a rising star. He was only 41. He was a district court judge. And, who knows? He could have gone on to the Colorado Supreme Court or even the federal bench. But he blew it hanging out with those old associates that, frankly, were up to no good. Now, let's take a look at another case why I say you have to be careful. A former judge in North Carolina has been sentenced for a sex crime against a child after the judge was arrested in 2019 at a hotel near the Biltmore Hotel in North Carolina. Now, former Judge Daniel Ray Green was sentenced to nearly 2 years in prison, followed by supervised probation after pleading guilty to a felony of indecent liberties with a minor. So that's what it comes back to, ladies and gentlemen, is that, yes, judges, politicians, people should be treated with respect, but they have to respect the office that they are holding. And understand, it's not their office, it's the public's office, and they're public servants, and they have to hold themselves to a higher standard. They need to be held to a higher standard. And when these people are held up, guess what? They oftentimes fall. That's why you have to be careful when the heroes you pick, because unfortunately, heroes normally disappoint. Next on the docket, how do you get arrested for concealment of a corpse? Well, you may ask yourself, I hope I never have to deal with that. But the reality of it is, hopefully you never will. Well, an upstate New York woman has been accused of hiding a corpse of her roommate, who apparently overdosed back in February. So Stephanie Hilburn has been charged with one felony count of concealment of a human corpse and faces up to 4 years in prison if she is ultimately convicted. The police received an anonymous call on February 14th requesting a welfare check of 62-year-old Patricia Barter, who lived at the residence with two roommates, Hilburn and Deborah Elglin. Police said Hilburn and Eglin became nervous when officers asked to speak with Miss Barter. Of course they did. The two women directed the police to Miss Barter's room, where officers discovered her body on the bed. She appeared to have been dead for some time, and according to the police, once again, the lady stated that she must have died of an overdose. The police also found out that Barter's body was hidden so that guests wouldn't discover it during several parties and gatherings that Hilburn and Eglin had at the residence in the following weeks. Like, how do you cover up the smell of a decomposing body? Well, that's how you get arrested for the concealment of a corpse. If somebody dies, you know what? Call the police. Because, eventually they're going to find out and somebody's going to say that, there's a dead body in somebody's bedroom and they probably better check that thing out. Well, exactly. Don't go there. Hopefully you're responsible enough that you'll never be charged with concealment of a corpse. And finally today, our dumb criminal contestant of the day. Please meet Danielle Ferrero. Now, she traveled Sunday afternoon to the Charlotte County Jail to visit with her boyfriend, Cody Thomas. Now, he's 25, she's 38. Apparently, it was a video visitation, so there's no actual contact. Apparently, their conversation became rather sexual in nature, and at some point, Miss Ferrero may have pleasured herself on the chair and let her visiting partner know that she had achieved a climax. She may have also flashed her breasts at her boyfriend, Mr. Thomas, whereupon Miss Ferrero was ultimately arrested, that's right, for an alleged lewd display. When Miss Ferrero was arrested, couldn't believe that she was being arrested for flashing her breasts over the camera to her boyfriend. Miss Ferrero, I get it. You have deep passions for your boyfriend. You have to talk to him. You want to make him happy. You want to be happy. Well, just save it till you get home, because your boyfriend was only serving a 30-day sentence. He was going to be home real shortly anyway, and now you have more troubles on top of, your previous troubles that you had, which include criminal mischief, grand theft, intoxication, and drunk driving. All right, that's all we have for you today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Crime Talk.